Hey Jackals, do you know what we'll be doing today? We'll be making something cool with the text, and I got the idea from Viva League. If you don't know what this is, well, just take a look. These guys make funny videos, mostly about gaming, and they also have a YouTube channel, but the difference between the YouTube and the Facebook videos is in the titles. As you can see, they have titles in the Facebook videos, and that's what I'll be trying to do. They use a couple of effects in the text, so what I'll do is use all of the effects that I can see and put them into one macro. Now let's get digital. So just to give you an idea of what we'll be doing is maybe have a text line that you can change the effect on a part of a text and also change the color and use any kind of effect that you want. But we won't just end it there. What we'll be doing is making a macro so that when you type the title in, you'll simply be able to put it onto the timeline, make the changes. This is a macro in testing, so it's not final, but what you'll be able to do is change the text and change all of the effects. So first we'll be making a fusion composition. So open the media pool, right click in the media pool and make a new fusion composition. You can give it a name if you want, give the duration to 5 seconds and click create. Then put it onto the timeline, select it and go into the fusion page. Now the goal that I wanted to achieve with this effect is to have most, if not all of the animations be automatic. And before I start making the effect, just so you know, this effect can break inside the fusion page. At least with one of the nodes, and I'll mention it when we get to that point. So the first thing that we need is a text, obviously. What we'll want to do is to put some text in, change the font that you have on the PC. I'll use Arial and bold because that's what everyone has. Change the color. They've used a yellow one, so I'll use the same, something like that. We need to change anything else. Not at the moment. Then what we'll want to do is go to shading, enable number 2. This will be the outline and change the color to black. You can also change how thick this outline will be by increasing the thickness. I think that's okay. And then we need to enable the shadow. That's under number 3 automatically and simply enable it and that's it. But you can also position it if you want to change the position of the actual shadow, as you can see. But I'll simply leave it to default. Now the first effect that I want to be able to achieve is to angle the text on the sides. And the easiest way to do that, especially if you want to just animate a portion of the text, is to use the transform node because you can adjust the angle. But not only that, we can adjust the pivot point. And then once we have a mask set, we can adjust the angle and then only this part of the text will be angled. But just before I start doing this, I'll simply position the text to where I want it, kind of. And I'll also adjust the size to, let's see, 0.5. Now in the angle, if I want this to be automatic, I'll simply use an expression. And I'll use a sine function and use time being the current frame. And if I play this, this is the kind of the animation that you can expect. We can also multiply this at the end. So the angle now increases, as you can see, so we can leave it at that. Obviously, we don't want the text to move like this, so that's where the pivot comes into play. So if I position it down, the animation now looks like this, which is cool. But now we have the effect over the whole text, and we don't want that, so I'll use rectangle mask, connect it to the transform mask input, adjust the size, and in this case, we just want to affect the awesome part of the text, so I'll position it here. Now we can play it. Looks like this. It's not perfect because now we have to go into the transform and position the pivot to the center of the awesome part. So something like that. We have the effect that we want. Let's go to the next one. The next effect is waviness, control space, or some have shift space to open the select tools. Add the waviness effect, position it. We'll change the waviness type to horizontal. I'll put the scale all the way to 100 and we can also adjust the strength, but I think 5 is good enough. You don't need to adjust the phase and maybe we'll adjust the speed. and we'll disable the transform for now. And as you can see now, the waviness does not work in the Fusion page. So I will change the speed to 0.4. It still does not work. Let's see if it works if we enable back the transform. It does in this case. So maybe if I disconnect the transform, it is broken again. So the waviness does need to have something else included if you want it to actually work. So let's say that we're happy with the settings that we used here. The next effect that we'll use is dent. And I'll use this one because it has less options than this one. And this one has all of the options that we actually need. Position it down in the center. Now I'll have to make it small. I don't want this dent effect, so I'll change it to dent 2. Now I don't want to affect the whole text, so I'll simply connect the rectangle to the dent. Now I may have some issues like this, as you can see. In that case, the rectangle mask would have to be adjusted. Maybe also positioned, maybe something like that. So now the A doesn't look as good, it goes out. So we can also scale this down, maybe adjust the strength to 0.4. That's awesome. Now the thing with dent is that it doesn't move manually, and that's okay if you want to do this manually. Once you make the macro, you will simply animate the center position from left to right or right to left, but you can also do it manually with an expression, and I'll show you how. We'll be taking the rectangle, the width of the rectangle, and its center position. So I'll simply pin the rectangle and I'll select the dent. Now what we want to do with the dent is that it moves from the left side of the rectangle, like this, from the center position to here. And that's what we want to do automatically throughout the whole duration of the video clip. In this case, the video clip is 5 seconds long, so this will also adjust automatically if you make it shorter or longer. So in the dent node, right click on the center, click expression. We don't need this. I'll simply now drag the plus to the center position of the rectangle. Now this gives us the center X and Y position, which is the same. So currently this is positioned in the center. Now what we want to be able to do is position this to the left side and then animate it automatically to go to the right side. So what I'll do now is use the width value and then I'll link it to the actual width. But first let me just show you with a whole number. So we'll use the rectangle center position and we only want to affect the x-axis. So we'll use point 0.5, 0. So we'll only affect the x value, but we won't affect the y value. So as you can see, now the dent moved all the way here because it's 0.55 minus 0.5. So now instead of this 0.5, I'll use the width value, which currently is this, and it position it here. And that's because this is basically the width of the rectangle. If you want to position it exactly on the left side, we have to divide it by 2. So now we have it here. And now if we want to move this automatically to here, we'll actually have to use a second part of expression that uses time, which is the current frame. And that goes from 0 all the way to 119 in my case. And then we'll also use comparator end, which is the last frame of the composition, which in this case is also 119. Now because the time at the beginning is 0, we have to leave this part of the expression alone, and then I'll use plus, point, I'll again use this width value, now I'll divide it by 2 again, and then I'll multiply it by time divided by comp.renderEnd, comma 0. Now as you can see, we do have the animation, but it only comes to the halfway point. Why is that? Now that's because we have the current frame, which is time, divided by the last frame. This gives us 1. So if you go to this point, we basically have this expression be 1 and this is half. And if you want this to go all the way till the end, we would have to multiply it by 2. So if I did this, we can now basically take this 2 away and this 2 away. So we don't have any division and we don't have any multiplication. And now it goes all the way till the end. So this is how I can make this happen. Now one issue that we have currently is that if I make this and select the dent, you can see that it still starts from the actual value where it was. And that's because this is a hard-coded value and you don't want that. We want the actual width. So I'll simply delete this value. With the mouse pointer here, I'll click on the plus and select the width. And I'll simply copy it and paste it instead of this value. So now the dent will move based on the actual width of the rectangle. So if we change it, the dent position will also change. And the same goes with the position. So if we change it to here, the dent position also changes to where it should be. Okay, so we have that. I'll put this back to the awesome part of the text. Now in some of the videos, they also change a part of the text. To do that, we can use color corrector. So we'll simply connect it. And again, we need to connect the mask. We can now simply change the color of the text, as you can see. We would simply adjust the saturation to get a little bit more of the color that you want. Now in this case, the red doesn't really feel like red. So maybe we would also need to adjust the gamma to get it to stand out. You can use other effects if you want, but the last one that we need is duplicate. Simply connect it. Now we don't see any changes at the moment, but I will use 2 copies. I'll also connect the rectangle to the mask, zoom in a little bit, and what you'll want to do is to adjust the position. And maybe I'll change the color back to default, just so we can see the difference. Now in the duplicate node, you'll want to adjust the blend. I've used 0.5. And I've also set the burn in to 0.5. Now currently everything is the same. So what you want to do is also adjust the offset, but not by too much. So maybe, let's say, maybe 1 frame is good enough. Just so we have some that see-through effect. Now if we change the color, we can. And we'll get different kind of results. I'll simply put this to default values. So we have all of the default values. Now what you want to do is to make a macro out of this so that we can actually use it inside the edit page and not have to go inside the Fusion page all of the time. How the macro options will look like depends on the nodes that you select in the order. So first I want to have the text. Maybe I'll select just all of the nodes and the mask last. Then right click on the last node, macro, create a macro. And now you can click on the actual node so that you know what you want to change. Inside the text node, we want to be able to change the text. So this is stylized text. We want to be able to change the font and the font style. We also want to be able to change the color if you want to, but this will be the default color. Every option that you have set, once you make the macro, this is the default values. We also want to be able to change the size. Maybe you want to be able to change the line spacing and tracking as well. That's about it. Actually, that's not about it. We also want to be able to change the write on function. And then we have the start and end. So I know I want these 2 options to be enabled. That's about it when it comes to the text tab. Do you want to be able to change anything in the layout? Well, I did make some changes to the center position, so that's what I'll select. Next, we have the transform. I didn't change anything here, so I'll just leave it as is. And then we have shading. Do I want to be able to change anything here? I can adjust all of the elements, so I'll enable that. And I'll enable the first 3 elements because those are enabled. And what do we want to be able to change? Probably the color, so let's find it. So we have the color here under type, red, green, blue, and alpha. And I think that should be about it. Then next we have the transform. If I select it, what I want to animate, I definitely want to be able to change the pivot. So I'll select that. Anything else? Now the animation will be automatic. Maybe if I wanted to change the expression, I could also select the angle so that I could increase or decrease how far the angle will move. So that's about it for the transform. Next, in the waviness, I'll simply select all of the options, even the animate, so that if you don't want it, you can simply disable it. Well, I won't enable the face because you don't need it. So like that. Then we have the dent. In the dent, what we want to be able to adjust, maybe the type of the dent. The center position will be as is. You can change the size and the strength. In the color corrector node, we want to be able to change the saturation, the actual color picker, and the gamma. So inside here, I'll simply select everything that has to do with the wheel. Then we don't need the tint mode. Maybe I'll adjust the hue. So hue 1, hue 2, hue 3, and the saturation. And then we want to be able to change the gamma. So let's find the gamma. As you can see, this is the name that is displayed here, but the actual name of the function is this. So this is the one that I'll be adjusting. And I think that's about it when it comes to the color corrector. Inside the duplicate node, what we want to be able to adjust is maybe the time offset and the number of copies, maybe the center position as well. The size could be also adjusted, the burn in and the blend. Maybe the angle could also be adjusted. And now lastly, in rectangle mask, we want to be able to change the center position. So this is the center, and we want to be able to change the width and the height. And that's about it. Now, if some of the names are a little bit too confusing that you would know what they are, you could also type mask center, mask width, and mask height. Now when you have everything done, go to File, and I suggest you save as group, because you'll be then able to come back to these nodes and make adjustments. If you use Save As, all of these nodes will be merged into one, and you won't be able to get them back. So Save as group. Then go one step back, Fusion, then go to Templates, Edit, and this will be a title. Now I've made 2 tests, as you can see. Now I'll simply name this one Viva Latex Tut. Save it. You may need to wait a little bit, otherwise you may need to restore DaVinci Resolve. Then let's go here, and it is visible. Now we can simply put it onto the timeline. We have, this is an awesome text, fully animated. So let's see a couple of adjustments that we can make. And I'll simply position the text. Now we can also animate to write on function. So that's one option that we used. So we have here the shading elements. I won't be making any changes. Maybe I'll change the color of the text. Now that I've changed the color, you can kind of see where the rectangle mask is. So if you want to position it where it should be, go here and select Fusion Overlay. And now we will see all of the effects. And in this case, we can adjust the rectangle mask and the dent. So I'll simply adjust the mask down here. Now because the dent is linked to the rectangle, we can't actually adjust it. But if we didn't link it with the expression, you could also adjust it here. So we have here the hue, the saturation, and the gamma, just like you want it. Now we can set the number of copies as well. And we can also offset those copies. Then we have here size adjustment, but the size adjustment will be really tiny. maybe up to 1.2, and that's about it. Now for the angle, you'd also need the pivot point, not just the center position. So angle in this case is not really useful. Then you have the bring in and the blend. And then we have here the mask center position, which is the rectangle, so you can change it. And also just the height and the width. And as you can see, by adjusting the width, the dent also changes with it. Now one effect that I've kind of skipped through was the waviness. I can disable the animate. Now this would still apply the scale and strength, so it still need to make this 0. And that's how I would do this kind of text effect, so that you can adjust all of the settings inside the edit page. And that's it for this video. If you found it helpful, you know what to do. And if you want today's tutorial files, you can get them on my website. Link will be down below. I'm Simon, until next time jackals, keep it digital.